Last thing, Damon Larry wanted to shout you out. He had you in the Supercoach team. Any message for him? keep me on, Damon, or, I'll chill out next week. Any message for Damon?
No, yeah, appreciate you, man. But, they said, I wasn't the sixth man of the year. They got some other candidates, but I just got to let you know, man, you got to put some respect on my name.
Oh, no. Hey, that was directly to you. Damon.
Big shot, Quad.
That right there is exactly what we want from the NBL. Kawatnoi bringing some personality and some confidence to the broadcast. We loved it, and we have to acknowledge our man, Leonard Copeland, with a pretty hilarious comeback a few days later. But anyway, that's what we want more of. This is the ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour podcast. Kane, Pittman, and the best newsbreaker in Australian basketball, Olgun Uluc, is also here. Olgun, hello to you, my friend. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm a little bit tired. There's a lot going on. A lot of games in Sydney, so I've been going there. A lot of people in town getting ready for Hoops Fest next week. So it's a mixture of working, hosting people. So I've been exhausted, but I'm happy to be here.
Well, I know that you've been busy, and Kawatnoi, that audio was all about his production and potential sixth man of the year. And it did have me thinking about the best benches in the NBL. We might get to that later in this show. But Olgs, on a Sunday night here in the US where I'm based, I text you, and this is potentially some ideas for me. You throw some ideas back. Our producer, Fatessa, throws some ideas in the mix, and we get together as a trio, and we discuss what the show could be. I text you at about 5:30 p.m. East Coast time here in the US. Normally you get back. By the time I finished watching Sunday Night Football, bit of a snoozer, Patriots and Chargers, doesn't matter. It was about 11 p.m., a bit after 11 p.m. I still had not got a response from you. And I went to bed angry last night, Olgun. But then in the end, I guess I have to say that it was fair enough, because I woke up to some news breaking and you were working the phones.
That entire time that I didn't respond to you, I promise you I was working. I was planning for really interesting things for us to talk about on this show. And I'd like it to be known, and I'd like to emphasize this, that you woke up to a beautifully written, dot-pointed, big text message that said, hey, let's do this, this, and this, because this is the news that we've just come across overnight. So we have lots to talk about. We have lots of news to talk about and lots of developments. So at the end of the day, I should have responded. I should have given hey, working on something, give me a minute. Probably should have given you a heads up. However, all's well that ends well.
I know I have known you for a long time, Olgun, and I know that from time to time, a lot of the times you are working, but also from time to time you're a socialite. You like to get out there and sit at these cafes, and you're like, hey, this is a business meeting, and you're just sitting there sipping on your little chai latte or whatever you're drinking, your oat milk, whatever it is. And so sometimes I think when you say you're working, we all know that you're just drinking coffees with some important people. But on this occasion, you were bang on. The Adelaide 36ers have made a change. Troy Brown heading back over here to the US, personal reasons as the Adelaide 36ers have had. And they did not mess around with a replacement, which tells us all this was not a shock to the Adelaide 36ers. What can you tell us about how this went down?
All right, so my reporting is that John Jenkins is heading to the Adelaide 36ers. There is an agreement on a deal. The way this came about is that Troy Brown Jr., he informed the 36ers over the weekend that, hey, I'd like to return back to the US for personal reasons. The 36ers are never going to stop a guy from doing that. And they said, okay, you go ahead and do that. The fortunate thing for the 36ers is that the timing worked out well. In that, one, Troy Brown Jr. wasn't performing at the level, but two, they had a week to replace him. They had until their game in Hoops Fest to register a new player. And so it didn't take long for them to make a few phone calls and say, all right, what do we want around Bryce Cotton? Someone like John Jenkins is available. He's someone who Mike Wells has a relationship with. They've both been a part of the USA basketball program. He's a lights-out shooter. For some of the things that he might not be able to do, he is an elite shooter in world basketball. He's just been playing in Romania. He's super well-traveled. He is a big guard who can shoot it. He's demonstrated to be effective at the FIBA level as well. And so it only took about 24, 40 hours for the 36ers and Jenkins' representatives, Charles Mizoraka at Slash Sports, to agree on a deal. And Kane, the expectation based on what I hear is that John Jenkins will be in town. He will be in Perth for Hoops Fest. And there is every expectation that he will be suited up for that game on Sunday between the Adelaide 36ers against the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, a clash between number one and number two. But here you have a guy coming in They like the idea of Bryce Cotton as the ball carrier, the primary ball carrier. Flynn Cameron and Isaac White do secondary ball carrying. So it's all right. How do we maximize Bryce? If every team's going to load up on Bryce Cotton, what do we want? Let's widen the floor. Let's bring in this world-class shooter in John Jenkins.
Yeah, this is a massive hat tip to the Adelaide 36ers organization, by the way, because we have discussed this in previous years where it's been a mess and things have not worked, whether it is the coaches, whether it's the locker room. But when we're going to get to it, there are a number of teams looking for an import replacement. This is a team that is 19-5. They're on the top of the standings right now, and they have not wasted any time at all in bringing a talent in. Now, it's a very different player. Olgun, you go from the size of Troy Brown. And I know a lot of people, I saw it on Twitter saying they wanted more from him. The production was probably not where he wanted it to be. But I still thought that he was the type of player that made sense for this team. He was, starting at the end. They had Matt Kenyon starting before this. So we always think that you add talent and everything straight away works. Maybe this takes a little bit of time. And it does ask questions because if you look at John Jenkins and then you think about DJ Vasiljevic, they're much more similar players than what Troy Brown and DJ was. So the question will be, who starts? And does DJ sit back and say, well, hang on, I've been here all season. Now this guy's starting ahead of me. So I love the work from the Adelaide 36ers. Let's see how it works out. These things don't always, a lot of the times, work as perfectly as they do. But you got to congratulate them and just the efficiency of getting this done. This is a team that's all in. And if you're a 36ers fan, you got to absolutely love that.
So if I can steal sort of a mantra from another ESPN podcast, the Hoop Collective, the mantra that they use over the course of them covering basketball is actions over words. And when you look at the 36ers right now, they know that this is their championship window. Like you said, they're 19-5. They know that Bryce Cotton's 33. These seasons don't come very often. And so they see this as a legitimate window for them to win a championship. And so, hell, go all out, bring in someone like John Jenkins. I agree with you. There are a lot of similarities between him and DJ Vasiljevic stylistically. The thing that John Jenkins brings is some size. And it's the concern that some people in Adelaide have about how do we play these guys next to Bryce Cotton, whose skill sets can maximize him and he can maximize their skill sets. But Bryce Cotton's a smaller guard. He's not the greatest defender in the world. He's getting older every year, obviously. You want someone, I don't think John Jenkins is going to come in and set the world on fire from a defensive standpoint, but at the very least, he's a 6'4" shooting guard. So there is some positional size there that I think the 36ers liked. And again, you widen the floor, that maximizes Bryce Cotton and maximizes Isaac Humphries, Zylan Cheatham. So again, I think the balance of this team got way better because Troy Brown Jr., unfortunately, I think a lot of people said he's this sharpshooter coming in. He's never demonstrated to be a sharpshooter. I don't know why people were saying that. And unfortunately, they were just not effective as a team when he was on the floor. So this is, I think, an obvious upgrade. The team wasn't good with Troy Brown Jr. I think they'll be way more effective with a sharpshooter like John Jenkins.
Yeah, get in the comments, whether you're listening on the audio platform, hit us up on Twitter, social media, Instagram, or get on YouTube where you can watch the show. 36ers fans, I've said it before, these guys, they are sniffing out a championship. They are feeling really good, as they should be. I know they lost to Tasmania, but they're still in a fantastic spot, 3 games ahead of the Phoenix in second in the loss column. So let us know what you're thinking, 36ers fans, bringing in this import straight away. Like 36ers, man, they're not messing around. Which does bring us to a couple of other bits of news that we have around the Sydney Kings and also the Perth Wildcats, 2 teams that have an opportunity to bring someone in. And maybe if you're a fan of these 2 teams, you're looking at this Adelaide situation and you're frustrated. The Kings, they lose Bull Qual. The Perth Wildcats, you lose David Duke Jr. You tweeted this a few days ago, but just perhaps for those people that haven't seen that tweet, what is the time frame on the clock here for the Sydney Kings and Perth Wildcats to bring in an addition for the road to the playoffs?
All right, let's paint this. We're recording this podcast on a Tuesday, January 13.
Monday for me, but hey, look,
Monday for you, but this is an Australian podcast. Can't get with it.
Sure.
It is January 13 today. The Sydney Kings have until January 15, so until basically end of business on January 15, to register a player. That means a contract has to be signed and executed by the NBL. Now, the NBL will be in Perth during Hoops Fest. They will be ready to execute contracts. They're sitting there waiting for these contracts. And so there's not going to be a delay. If you send them a contract at 5 p.m., they're going to execute the contract. So the Sydney Kings have until January 15, which is their game in Hoops Fest against Brisbane Bullets. Perth Wildcats have until January 16, which is their game in Hoops Fest against the Illawarra Hawks. That is the timeline. So effectively, the Sydney Kings have 2 days to sign a player. Perth Wildcats have 3 days to sign a player. And when they sign that player, that person doesn't have to come right away. John Jenkins is coming right away. I think he'll suit up at Hoops Fest for Adelaide's game against the Phoenix. This guy, whomever these teams sign, and both teams are endeavoring to sign somebody, that person has to be here and suited up for their respective January 25 games. So you can sign the guy, and then you have a good 8 or 9 days to get the guy over here, get visas, clearances, and have that person suited up, because that person needs to play 7 games in order to be eligible for the playoffs. And so the clock is ticking. The Kings have 2 days to sign a guy.
Can I just, what is, if you know, because I've seen this and it's good information to have, I would say that this is not as clear as it should be in terms of fans wondering what the dates are. Why is there that date when all you need to play is 7 games? Like, I might be a little bit simple for thinking this should be the approach, but if the requirement is to play 7 games and you sign before the 7th last game, why would you not be eligible? What is the sort of the thinking behind that, or the reasoning for that?
So the first part is the having to effectively finalize your roster before the 75% mark of the season. Now that is in the CBA. That is in every player's contract as well. And that's effectively so. And the 7-game rule is a similar reason, where you don't want teams to go and sign a guy with 2 games left, and it's someone who could completely shift the championship calculations, because they're going to go pay that guy for 1 month. It just doesn't, at the risk of sounding sort of a bit too noble, it just doesn't sound fair, right? The idea that you can just go sign a guy. And so the idea is that this player has to play a meaningful part of your season in order for him to be eligible for the playoffs. And by the same token, there is a rule where if you're signed before the first game of the season, then you are eligible eligible for the playoffs, no matter how many regular season games you play. Because the assumption is that you were signed for the season. A team has basically held on to you this entire time. If you suffer an injury, so Jason Spurgeon is a really good example with the Sydney Kings. There is a chance he comes back at some point this regular season. He probably won't play 7 games. He probably won't suit up for 7 regular season games, but he'll be eligible for the playoffs because the Sydney Kings had signed him prior to the first game of the season. So they were obviously endeavoring for him to be part of their team going forward. I think it's so teams don't stack their rosters at the sort of D-Day, the very last week of the season. So they pay a minimal amount of money for a high value player, and it's sort of, and then the richest team can just go get a guy at the end and go win it all.
Yeah, it's certainly more complicated than the NBA when you point to the money and the advantages you could have. I still just find it a little bit confusing. Like, to me, if they just said, "Hey, you're just going to sign a guy by the date," then if you go ahead and sign a guy, then he's eligible for the playoffs. That would seem like a more simpler way of doing it, because part of this is luck and part of this is timing. You can sign a guy like John Jenkins now, and you're saying potentially he plays earlier, so he might get 8 games in. I believe the Wildcats have got 9 left, so he might play 8 or he might play 9 games. But if he has just say a finger injury and misses 3 games, then you've done all the right things. You've signed him, and now you're saying that he's not eligible for the playoffs. So I don't know. I just feel like this should be one or the other. If you get the work done,
the difference is the player has to suit up for 7 games. He doesn't have to play, so he just has to be dressed and available. But he can get a DNP, and so if someone is injured, so John Jenkins. He let's say he comes in, suits up for Adelaide, plays against the Phoenix, turns an ankle, he's out for 4 weeks. He can still so if he's out for 4 weeks, he's not going to meet the 7-game criteria.
He could be in uniform in a moon boot, and they'll count that.
Yes, and because the idea is this is a person who's on your active roster and who you are paying the salary of, and his salary is hitting the cap for those games.
So in that case,
you are eating the sort of the activity of that player effectively.
So in that case, why don't we just have the date that everyone has to sign a guy by? Then it's. I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. You can have someone overseas.
Some owners who want that too. There are a lot of owners who are just like, this is confusing. Just make a date. It was a little bit. It was more simple when it was a 28-game season, because 75% of the season lined up perfectly with 7 games. Even then, it was still a little bit complicated because every team's date is different. But just for ease, there's no perfect world. But it feels like the most reasonable thing is just to pick a date and say every team has to sign a guy by this date. I feel like that would also be easier just for us to cover, because having to explain this over and over again and say like, hey, like 75% of the season is actually like 24.7 games. So do they have like, it's just very confusing. So just, I agree that just create a date and say every team's got to have their roster finalized by this date. And then I agree with it. And the 7-game criteria, I think a player has to suit up for 7 games. Otherwise, again, you're just not going to eat the cap spend of a player because you're going to, and then just activate them for the last game. That feels unfair. So the 7-game thing makes sense, but just create a date where players have to be signed by.
Yep, well said. That's really good info by you. You know that I'm always going to complain about something. I was just, curious. I do find it confusing, and I think it can be challenging for fans, particularly the Sydney Kings fans and Perth Wildcats fans that are wondering what it all looks like, and there is mixed messaging out there. So that
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, please.
I got another thing. I'm asking round, hey, who's Sydney signing? Who's Perth signing? I'm digging, right? The consensus with Perth, what I keep hearing from a lot of people is they're taking their time. And I'm thinking, they don't have time. What do you mean? So it feels like I don't know if that's a team that will just rush into a decision for the sake of it. They're winning games right now without David Duke Jr. and now without Jaron Riley. And on Jaron Riley, he had scans. From what I hear, he'll more than likely miss the rest of the regular season. So they'll likely be without Jaron Riley for the rest of the regular season, without Duke Jr. for a good chunk of the remainder of the regular season. But they're winning games right now. And so I don't know if they're in like a crazy rush to just go and sign someone for the sake of it. There's a sense that they don't hate what they have right now, that they can continue to tread water and maybe trend upwards. And then everyone comes back and they're sort of full strength for the playoffs. There's a chance that happens, even though they are endeavoring to get someone. But there's a lot of weird mixed messages out there.
I did have it in my notes that John really passed on the same message about not wanting to rush into this decision, but with David Duke Jr., also Jaron Riley on the sideline, as you pointed to, I think it's going to be fascinating. They have got a pretty easy run home, though. They play the Cairns Taipans a couple of times. They play the Illawarra Hawks a couple of times. They play the Brisbane Bullets once. So they are in a position where they could potentially make a little bit of a push here, albeit I understand why Wildcats fans would be highly frustrated about the situation and wanting an answer at the point guard position, which we've asked all year. You have been busy, Olks. Credit where credit's due, man. You've done some nice work since we last caught up. And only a few hours after we podcasted, I was thinking maybe you could have brought this to the table, but maybe you didn't quite have it finalized. The Brisbane Bullets head coaching scenario. We have been discussing this at length and what are they going to do? Didn't work out with Stu Lash. You have reported that Will Weaver is on the verge of signing a contract to be the next head coach of the Brisbane Bullets. Where is this at? What is the holdup? When is this going to happen?
So these are advanced talks, and these are talks from what I'm told have been going on for weeks. Will Weaver has had multiple in-person meetings with Jason Levian, the owner of the Brisbane Bullets, in Washington, D.C. And so he is their number one target. There is a contract in front of him. There have been negotiations that have been ongoing. And so there is a contract in front of Will Weaver that is sort of the culmination of negotiations. And so as of now, my reporting is still, it's advanced talks. He is the front runner. And if I was a betting man, I'd say that he will end up as the head coach of the Brisbane Bullets. They did have, a conversation with Trevor Gleeson. They had a conversation with Andre Lamartis. They asked, Paul Hanare what he wanted to do. There was a conversation with Rob Beveridge early in the process. But Will Weaver is their number one target. There's a sense that Weaver has a ton of interest in the job, again, to the point where these negotiations reach the advanced stages. Right now, I'm just waiting. I'm just waiting until I hear that there is a signature on the dotted line. But Will Weaver is in the driver's seat for this job, and I'd be surprised if it didn't get done.
Yeah, obviously someone that's very familiar to Australian basketball fans from his time with the Kings, but also with the national program as well. He went to the Houston Rockets. He went to coach Paris basketball there. Then he went to the Brooklyn Nets. And there was a scenario where the Nets staff turned over. I think the last time I saw Will Weaver was at the NBA draft about 18 months ago. And he was, kind of discussing the idea, no passion lost. He was just biding his time until the next opportunity came up once that staff in Brooklyn turned over. So he's one of the great personalities. He's a proven head coach with record across the board. So I know that there's always a conversation around the Australian coaches and wanting more Australian coaches in the NBL. And I totally understand that, Olgun. But I also look at a scenario like this where I think sometimes we overlook the great things that Australian head coaches are doing and advancing their careers. So think about Jacob Chance, who's moved on to the G League, and Matt Nielsen, that's been with the Spurs for a long time, Damian Cotter with the Bulls, Adam Caporn, the coach of the Boomers with the Washington Wizards, Trevor Gleeson, who was in the NBA with 2 different franchises. So I understand the pull for Australian coaches. You said they made the call to Trevor Gleeson, but ultimately, these Australian coaches should be celebrated that are moving onwards and upwards to the NBA. There's some more challenges financially with the Japanese league and stuff like that. But I don't have a problem with this. If you're a Bullets fan, you're going to be pumped if Will Weaver, a proven head coach, is the guy that's coming in. Now you just want stability. You want him there for 3, 4, 5 years and get this thing back on track.
So a few things, and let's go in reverse. So if Will Weaver ends up accepting this job, my understanding is that they would not hire a GM of basketball. And so effectively Will Weaver will have control over sort of the basketball decision-making processes there, which I think is a good thing. There was obviously a significant backing behind Darren McDonald. He is obviously super respected around the NBL. He's very well liked. He's an awesome guy. I think everyone who's dealt with him has been around him. I've been around him a bit. Like, he's a great guy, right? High quality assistant coach. And when DMAC came out and said, I want the job, obviously everyone rallied around him. Unfortunately, the Brisbane Bullets have been in a situation they've continually hired head coaches without adequate head coaching experience. And the idea of hiring DMAC as the head coach, while also presumably Bullets fans wanting someone who is demonstrated and proven and has had experience as a head coach, I don't think those two things mesh. And so while I appreciate the emotional sort of push to have DMAC just remain as head coach, the idea of getting someone who is proven and demonstrated after what this team went through from James Duncan to Justin Schuller to Stu Lash, you want someone who is proven. Now, that's where when DMAC said they have a contract in front of an American, Will Weaver he's American, but he's Australian adjacent. He has been part of the Boomers program. He was a finalist for the Boomers head coach position. He's been in Australia before. Like, he is, functionally, he's effectively half Australian, right?
Well,
so
I think the important
an American.
I think the important thing is, sorry to cut you, you keep going, but I think the important thing is that I have had, some concerns with teams fully going international, whether it's the ownership group, whether it's the decision makers, because I do think that you need to have a knowledge of what works in the NBL, what is successful in the NBL, and also the personnel and the people that are going to help you build a roster. So that is very important with Will Weaver, exactly to your point. He has an intimate knowledge of what works in a league, and I think that's a big box that they've ticked.
Yes. And so that's why when the word got around that they might hire an American coach, this isn't some random American. This is someone who has been around the Boomers program for multiple years, including major tournaments. He has relationships around the NBL. I spoke to a player just this week who came over to me and said, hey, is Will Weaver getting the Brisbane job? I said, probably. And this person, I'd say this is probably a top 15 player in the league, was like, cool. Like, there are players who will go and sign with Will Weaver because of the relationships that he cultivated through his time in Sydney and through his time in Australian basketball. So he is not just some American. He is someone with deep relationships and connections in this region. And lastly, there is some concern that the NBL is not some breeding ground for Australian and Kiwi coaches. There is an issue there. When there are high quality coaches that come here, Scott Roth, Josh King, Mike Wells is at the top of the ladder right now. When high quality American coaches come to Australia, like, that is a good thing. I think that lifts the floor of just the coaching scene in general. But when you look at the amount of young Australian and Kiwi coaches who get jobs and get fired after 1 or 2 seasons, whether it's Schuler or Jacobus, CJ Bruton had 3 seasons. Is this a place where young Australian coaches want to coach? Are these jobs that they would take? Or are the stakes too high these days for them to take them? And do they want to go and build their careers elsewhere? All of those things could be true, but there's a slight issue that the NBL is not a place where Australian coaches feel completely comfortable taking head coach positions because of the scrutiny that they might get, and the fact that if you don't succeed immediately, you're all of a sudden an assistant coach for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I can see both sides. Like, to be clear, I would love it if Jacob Chance got a head coaching role here at the NBL and had it for a decade and then moved on to whatever he moved on to. Like, I would love
100%.
that. But this is a really high stakes league right now. And so these teams, they're not in the business of saying, well, we want to develop a head coach, and that's why I understand why their hands are tied. Like it's tough like that. If you take a chance on developing someone, a young Australian coach, I'm not naming any names, just like if you do, business wise, that is a lot more risky than getting a proven guy from overseas. So I understand it from both sides. And yeah, I agree. I would love to see, more opportunities for Australian coaches, but I just get why it's not the case. And then you can still do what Jacob Chance did and go to the San Antonio organization. He was a G League Coach of the Month the first month he was there. And I just think sometimes it doesn't get as much credit as it should for these guys that take that massive leap over to an overseas league like the G League or the NBA. And we should celebrate those guys like we celebrate the players that get the two-way contracts and get the opportunities as well. So I think you can still be a great Australian coach. It's just, does it have to be in the NBL? I'm not 100% sure. I think it's
the instinct is always we've lost these guys to overseas. I feel like the actual line that people should have is these people are really high quality Australian exports who are excelling in high quality leagues, and this is what the market dictates. They're earning a ton of money over there because they're high quality coaches.
Well said. And speaking of the US, it does bring us to this segment that we love every week. It is a StatMate Streak Watch. Download StatMate for all your NBA hot stats completely free. This is where we talk about someone doing great things in the NBA, and we rotate through and try and find an advanced stat that we like. We decided we should talk about Dyson Daniels this week. This is a man who had his first career triple-double just a couple of days ago. He was talking about it. He wanted it. It was an exciting moment. It was against a Denver team that did not have basically any of their stars, but to be fair, this Denver team continues to win without those stars in the lineup. So still, you have to get the job done. The number that we're looking at here is assist percentage for Dyson Daniels. So it is at 24.2 right now. It was 17.9 last year. Point to a lot of things with Dyson, but no doubt, more responsibility with this offense, more opportunities to run as the key facilitator. And he's taken massive strides, Olgun. This has been really fun to watch.
So in the offseason, when the Atlanta Hawks extended Dyson and they did not extend Trae Young, that was sort of the first sign of, all right, is there going to be a changing of the guard? Then when this season started, without Trae Young in the lineup, the team performed extremely well. And with Trae Young in the lineup, they did not perform well. And a part of that is Dyson Daniel really coming into his own as a playmaker, as an initiator, as the point guard of this team. Now, he's a unique kind of point guard, right? He doesn't really shoot the ball. He is a facilitator. This is what he looked like in the NBA Academy when I covered him as a junior. This is the role he played. But with Trae Young on the team, he was largely off the ball. Now that he's back on the ball primarily, again, the assist percentage goes up. All the stats effectively. The only stat that doesn't go up without Trae Young on the floor was shooting stats. But every statistic effectively, every counting stat goes up with Trae Young off the floor. It was very cool that the first game post Trae Young trade was Dyson Daniels dropping a triple-double. It was almost like a message was sent, a statement was made of, all right, you've moved on from this guy who's been a really great ambassador for your program. Now we're moving forward into sort of my time as the starting point guard, and this is what we can look forward to as we move forward. So I think it was a really cool statement from Dyson to have that triple-double and continue to show those playmaking chops without Trae Young in the lineup.
Last 9 games, 13.7 rebounds, 8 assists. So this wasn't just a random triple-double. He has been knocking on the door of this for weeks now. I was in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago, and to your point, to follow up what you just said, I asked Quinn Snyder about, the shooting of Dyson Daniels, and then how this team continues to try and function offensively with him. And he said, well, clearly, the first thing is he needs to keep shooting the ball. But then outside of that, he praised him for the way that he is working around screens, the way that he is getting downhill, the way he is cutting off the ball, and then making the right decision every single time. So, look, he's shooting 11% from 3 right now, Olgun. The one point I would make, we said it at the start of the year, he's got a hand thing going on that at the start of the season, I don't know what the status of that is right now. It was never reported. He has lost confidence shooting the ball, and it's been a really rough stretch. I would argue that it's even more impressive that he's found ways to contribute otherwise without shooting the 3 and getting this responsibility, despite the fact that a lot of times he's been guarded by centers, he's been left alone at the 3-point line and almost dared to shoot. So this is a really challenging period. But if you go to an Atlanta game, we usually show up to the game 2.5 hours before. He is out there 3 hours before every game, getting up a ton of shots. He's working with Kyle Korver, one of the greatest shooters of all time. So I'm less alarmed about the shooting this year. It feels like an anomaly to me. He's going to be better than this, but it might be one of those things that's just really hard to turn in a season. I asked Ryan Brockhoff about that, about when you get in a real rut, is it really difficult to change in season? And he said, to be honest, I think it might be like this for the rest of the season. And then in the off season, he can rework it. He can get healthy and get confidence back as well. So we'll see what happens there. It was interesting stuff. I can't speak to the shooting mechanics, Olgun, or what goes through the confidence. Ryan Brockhoff certainly can. And, it's going to be fascinating to watch. I think he's better than this, though. We know that.
For sure. And speaking of the offseason, I know you're American now and you like to be in Connecticut, and that's great. However, in the offseason, I want you to come to Melbourne and I want you to get in the gym and watch.
Please. Well, I'm working on it, Olgun. I mean, it's a new year, new me. I'm trying to get in the gym. Is that what you're talking about? That's
my bad. I want you to get to courtside and watch the scrimmages that involve Dyson Daniels and Josh Giddey, because the careers of those two players will almost forever be aligned because of the way they grew up together, and now they're both $100 million players in the NBA. But Josh Giddey he can sleepwalk into triple doubles. Dyson Daniels finally, it's about damn time, got his first one, and so there's always a great competitiveness between those two. And if you go and watch the scrimmages that those two participate in at courtside in Melbourne over the offseason, they're going at each other. They're always on separate teams. Giddey runs one team, Dyson runs the other. Finally, Dyson is matching Giddey with a triple-double, and hopefully there's more to come. But the competition between those two is fun. So I know that because of the Giddey triple-doubles that we see almost on a nightly basis, Dyson really wanted one too. So the competitive nature between those two is going to be fun to track on forward. And I implore you to get back to Melbourne. I know you like to stay in Connecticut or Bristol or New Haven, wherever the hell you are. But come to Melbourne and watch these guys participate and then go against each other, because it's very fun. And this is another example of it.
Hey, man, I'm desperate to get back to Australia anytime I can. Hopefully for work purposes. That would be very nice for the back pocket, but we'll see how that goes. And, it's nearly footy season. I love basketball, but the Cats, man, Cats are getting ready. Dark day. AFL Grand Final. Snoop Dogg was great. And then I was miserable for the rest of the day. But we're going to bounce back, because you can lose, but it's how you respond, Olgun. And it's a big season ahead.
I know so little about footy. But I know that your team lost by a significant margin, and that made you unhappy. I think that made our next podcast worse. I selfishly want the Cats to win so I can have a happy podcast partner.
It's a new calendar year. I'm ready to talk about it, people. Anyway, that was StatMate Streak Watch. Download StatMate to play more or less. Just make 5-player predictions daily for your chance to win $1,000. And I know there could be a lot of people that are a little alarmist about the shooting with Dyson, but as I said, I think underratedly, this guy's 22 years of age. I think he's having a nice season. Let's move on to the last topic we have today.
We gave StatMate a bang for their buck with that segment. My God. Got a footy reference in there too. Hell yeah.
Yeah, they might reach out and be like, hey, it'll either be like, cut it a little shorter, boys.
Just dial it down.
Or it'll be like, you want to do AFL stat, mate? I'll be like, hell yeah, let's do it, man. Let's talk about
I'm off the show. I'm leaving.
I'm coming back to Australia. Let's talk about the best benches. So Kawhi, we had that sound off the top. And to be honest, I was looking through the stats. As I said, I don't need to vote on awards, so it's not something I've looked at. 6th man of the year. I don't know, make your case for Kawhi, Angus Glover. The numbers are virtually identical, so I don't know how you feel about it. I think Glover's had 16 double-digit games. Kawhi's had 15. Kawhi has been great in the last 5 or 6, though. Big-time player, big-time shot maker. But I wanted to more broadly look at the best benches in totality, because we've seen it time and time again. This time of the year, whether it's health stuff, which a number of teams are dealing with, or just big-time moments during runs in playoff games and championship series games. It's so important. Who do you think has the best bench in the NBL?
So I was going through them, and best bench is like, do you have high quality players coming off the bench, and do you have a lot of players who can come off the bench?
Right.
And for me, it came down to the Sydney Kings and the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix as the 2 deepest benches. And by deep, I mean, I think the Phoenix can legitimately go 10 or 11 deep. There are 10 or 11 playable guys in a playoff game today. They can pick and choose 10 or 11 guys that they can throw in a rotation. Does it go that deep in a playoff game? Probably not, but they can pick based on matchups and other things. And I think the Sydney Kings can do the same thing, especially when they're healthy, especially if you have Kelly Lepepe as part of it. And I think Jason Spurgeon can be a functional player in the NBL too. When you have those guys as part of it too, I think there are, again, 5 or 6 guys who can come off the bench for the Sydney Kings and make an impact. So they're the two. If I were, the Sydney Kings, you have Jalen Galloway had career high 27 points on the weekend. He came off the bench. Quatnoy comes off the bench. Tyler Robertson comes off the bench. Sean Bruce gets minutes here and there, but he's someone who is super functional coming off the bench too. So again, even Hunter Goodrick, he's an NBL 1 guy, comes in. He's unbelievably functional coming in. He makes a super positive impact for that team. He's a really good basketball player. As much as people like to clown, he's an NBL 1 player. Is there a skill set? No, he's a really damn good basketball player. So, man, the Sydney Kings are 10 or 11 deep. It's between them and the Phoenix. I might lean toward the Sydney Kings.
It's interesting because, Jalen Galloway has been a guy that we've discussed a lot. I think, it was pretty obvious that people flagged the idea that with Bull Qual going down, that it could open up an opportunity for Jalen Galloway. You were talking about, we were talking about the NBA, and I got asked a couple of weeks ago, you know what this is like. When you are over here, different people will come up to you at a game and they always ask about the NBL. And normally there's a couple of players you get asked about. Two guys I got asked about by a scout a couple of weeks ago. Dyson Daniels, obviously, for obvious reasons. And then the other one was Jalen Galloway. But it was around the question of, why is the production down? Why isn't he doing more? And to me, it was about the depth of the Sydney Kings team. An opportunity. I don't think Jalen Galloway's had a bad season, but he's just playing a completely different role to what he did play when he was the number 1 option or the number 2 option with the Boomers. So what we saw on the weekend from this game when he has 27 points, there was a number of lineups where KD took a significant amount of responsibility in this game. But then when you're looking at the mix of players, whether it's a Suarez or Robertson is out there, or Mo Uwach, Jalen Galloway was option number 2. And it's really the first time we've seen all season that he's had that opportunity to do that, and he delivered. Now, I'm not expecting 27 points per game every single night, but I am expecting him to be in significantly more scenarios where he is that guy, where he's going to be the second option. So the shots should come more. We should see a more aggressive nature from him. But to me, that goes into why the Sydney Kings bench is so deep, because you've had this in your back pocket the whole time. He's been playing a nice role. He can defend. He hasn't shot the ball as well as he would like, but he is available to do more. And I think when you talk about the best benches in the league, it's about having guys that can step up to the plate when required, when adversity hits, whether it's injury, whether it's foul trouble. And I think the Sydney Kings are very, very well built for that. I'll buy the Phoenix as well. I would have questions. What happens if Glover gets hurt? I know you had Ian Clark there, but Glover's so important to that team. I don't know if they're built as well to overcome a couple of absences. Why didn't you mention Tassie as well? You talk about responsibility on the bench. Tassie relies heavily on their core of Majuk Dang and Dreamick when he's back in the lineup, David Johnson, Ben Air. They're very, very heavy, leaning on those second unit guys to spark the offense in particular and get buckets.
Tassie's not bad. I think I'm looking at the pure volume of bench guys, and I think those other teams have it. But between Majuk Deng and David Johnson, just those two, the sort of production you get from those two is elite. That's the production that you get from Quatnoy and Jalen Galloway. It's similar production from those guys. Saying that not right now, but Angus Glover and Ian Clark. Ian Clark, I think, will find his feet a little bit better. He's not playing well right now.
Getting his gas.
I think he's shooting. How do I even say it? He's shooting 9.5% from 3. He will. Water will find its level with Ian Clark, but that they're bringing those two guys, Majuk Deng, David Johnson. I think they can bring a similar level of output as some of these other guys. I just think they go a little bit deeper. My argument for the Phoenix is, but again, if I look at their roster, who comes off the bench? Angus Glover, Ian Clark, Malik Lewis, DJ Mitchell, Akecha Lear, Daniel Foster. These are all guys who can be part of the main rotation. These are four or five of those guys have won this team games. So they go very, very deep. And with the way they play, they have to go deep because they play so up and in. On Jalen Galloway, I was sitting, it was Sydney-Melbourne. Sydney picked up gutsy win. Awesome win. Brian Goorjian was going crazy on the sideline. He felt that win, right? Unbelievably impressive win. Great coaching performance. Goorjian's been really, really good this season. But I'm sitting in a box and I'm surrounded by a group of the NBA scouts who are in town to watch this game. And they are going to this game to watch Dash Daniels play, right? Dash Daniels is the draft-eligible guy. Dash didn't have a great game. And then you have Jalen Galloway. And every time he does something, there's a step-back 3. You can sort of see the NBA scouts go like, okay. And then, he takes Milton Doyle off the dribble, finishes at the rim. They're just like, all right, cool.
Yeah.
and then he hits another three, then he hits another three, 5 of 5, and they're like, okay. Then I see there's a scout in front of me opens up his little Kindle. It looks like a little iPad looking thing, and he's got the real GM page of. He had Chris Golding open first because who is this guy who's hitting shots? But he had opened the real GM page of Jalen Galloway, going through it. So as much as these guys were there was 7 or 8 NBA teams in town. A lot of them were going to Hoops Fest as well, but they were in town to watch Dash Daniels. They saw Jalen Galloway, and again, there's a non-zero chance that some of them are going to go home and say, "Hey, we saw this guy. He had a cup of coffee in the NBA. Didn't play any games, but I see what the Bucks saw, and if he can do this more often with more usage, I think the up and down shooting was because of the up and down usage. If he can do this more consistently, again, there are the bones of an NBA player right there."
He's an NBA guy. I think we discussed it a couple months back. I can see it. He's got all the tools. He's got everything that an NBA team would want. And then sometimes you have to get lucky with the timing. It's not that these guys aren't watching games, but there's something different about seeing it right in front of you. And you're like, oh, man, this guy's bigger than I thought he was. He's more athletic. So shout out to Jalen Galloway. And also, as we wrap this up, hey, man, that was scary for Delhi. I was watching this game with a big smile on my face, just looking at the thing that you love about Matthew Dellavedova is that he's got that FU attitude. And Melbourne didn't want to sign the multi-year deal. So this guy is out for blood. It's the most perfect Matthew Dellavedova story of all time. And he came out and got up 6 3-point attempts in the first 11 minutes of this game. He looked awesome. He was dialed in. Still such an important player. I don't even know if he gets the love that he deserves, but it was sad, man. I hope that he's okay. I don't know if you have any updates, but that was a scary one, man. I hope he's back real soon and ready to go.
I was going to check in today. The thing that scared me was that he has had history with concussions.
Yeah.
There was a point 5 or 6 years ago where he was considering retiring because of how bad the concussions were. So it almost looked like he got knocked out when Dash Daniels, when he got hit on the hip, when Dash's hip hit Delhi, and then almost like then he hit the ground. So again, I'm going to check in today and tomorrow. Hopefully it's not as bad as it first looked, but Delhi knows his body better than anyone, and you could tell that he could tell that something was pretty wrong there. So hopefully this isn't a giant stint on the sideline. Hopefully he's okay, and just for his family, hope he's good.
Yeah, shout out to him, man. I know he's not listening to this, but Dally, look after yourself, man. We need you back on the floor. We need you back on the floor ASAP. All right. That was the ESPN Aussie Hoops Hour podcast. As we always say, get involved, particularly on YouTube in the comments. Lots of great stuff from Olgun in terms of updates. If you're a Kings fan, a Wildcats fan, how are you feeling with around 48 to 72 hours till you got to sign a name and you want to see that tweet from Olgun saying that they've locked something down? So let us know what you think about all of this, the coaching scenario in Brisbane. We will be back next Tuesday. Olgs, great stuff by you, man. I forgive you for not texting me back. It's okay.
Thanks, man. I didn't text back, but I brought a ton of juice to the table. And if people are around Hoops Fest, come say hello within reason. But like, if you see me, I'll be around. Come say hello.
Say hello, and if you got one of those Olgun big heads, he will sign it.
I'm stealing one. I'm going to steal one. I'm going to fly home with one of the big heads of me.
I've seen Olgun practicing his autograph, so he will sign it for you. He will take photos with you. Go say hello to the great man. Have fun at Hoops Fest, Olgun. Thank you to you. Thank you to our producer Fatessa, who once again, we finish the show and then she puts in all the hard work at the back end. So this was a fun show. Get involved, and we'll see you all next week.